Tonight I'm very excited to talk about this. It's kind of this is kind of a bonus theme lesson because it was a while back. I did a theme on kind of the mountain, and then just this other part of it just unfolded, which is, as the title suggests, music of the mountains. And it was something that when it kind of all clicked, it was just like, whoa, it's in all of these places. So I'm really excited to talk about it, and I hope it can lather for everyone else in the way that it lit up for me as well. And I think it'll be encouraging to us all. But I want to do a quick and brief review of some significant mountains that we talked about before. So these three, the mountain of Eden. Now that one might be a little less familiar, but when we looked at the lesson on mountains actually it was probably a couple months ago now, we talked about how in Ezekiel like explicitly says that he's symbolically talking about the fall of one of the pagan kings. He says, "You are like a cherub on the mountain of God in the Garden of Eden." And so when you go back and now we read Genesis 2, it's kind of intuitive because, well, we just saw it. I saw it a lot this past week. Is springs start up in the mountains and then they flow down the mountains and then become a mighty rushing river. That's the same thing in the Middle East. It's the same thing here. It's the same thing over in the Pacific Northwest as well. Springs start up in the hills and then they flow from the hills and become a river. And in Genesis chapter 2, there's a spring of water that comes up out of the ground like a mist, and then it becomes a mighty river that flows out of the Garden of Eden, down the mountain, and then it feeds all of the earth and waters the rest. It becomes four rivers as it leaves the mountain. And then, of course, the mountain of Sinai. Mount Sinai, where the people of Israel, when they're rescued out of Egypt, they go up to the mountain, and God descends onto that mountain, and he calls up Moses, and he gives them the laws, and he gives them the tabernacle blueprints. More on that later. And then Mount Zion in 1 Kings chapter 8. When Solomon's getting ready to build the temple, it says explicitly that it is on the mountain of Zion where he begins the construction. Oh, and also they tell you that it's the mountain of Moriah where Abraham sacrifices Isaac. But we're not going to talk about that. That's a whole other thing you could go forth and meditate on your own time. But another interesting pattern between all of these is in Genesis chapters 1 through 3, you kind of have this three-tiered structure. Because you've got the garden, but it's explicitly a garden that's within Eden. And then it says that there's a garden planted in the region of Eden, and then in the middle of that garden, there's two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So there's like this three-tiered pattern structure. In chapter 3, when the humans are sent out of the garden, it says they're put out of the garden, but not explicitly Eden. In fact, it's kind of almost significant and noted that later when Cain is exiled, it says he's sent out of Eden. So there's kind of this three-tiered pattern going on here, and it's in the middle of the garden where the tree of life is, where the life presence of God is. And then you keep reading throughout the story, and in that second one, on Mount Sinai, they get the pattern of this thing called the tabernacle. And the tabernacle has three sections. And in the very middle of the tabernacle is this place called the Holy of Holies. And that's where the Ark of the Covenant was. That's where God's presence rested. And then also is whenever they're on Mount Sinai getting those instructions for the tabernacle, they're on top of the mountain. There is a kind of a three-tiered pattern going on. And that looks like a candy corn. But what I'm talking about is at the foot of the mountain, all of the Israelites were camped here. It says that up on the mountain, the elders go to meet God, and then it says on top of the mountain, only Moses goes up there, and that's where he talks with God. And all of these spaces, like these central pinpoints on all of these mountains, so to speak, is what we're talking about when we talk about the mountain. It's the place where God's presence rests. It's the center of life. It's the place where the high priest could only go once a year. Only Moses could go to the top. Only Adam and Eve could go to that center of the garden. In all of those moments, it's that dwelling place of God and humanity where both of us meet. It's the Holy of Holies. It's the highest place. It's the center of everything. So this is all hopefully review. Hopefully this is ringing some bells from when we talked about this before. But then what suddenly was popping up to me as I was tracing with this theme of the mountains it was actually in the past month, just doing a study on my own. I'm going to introduce another idea. We're drinking from the fire hose right now. But real quick, let's talk about this idea of the mountain, and I have kind of an analogy. It's the mountain constellation. So if you go outside at night, you look up at the sky, you'll see a bunch of dots of light, all the stars up there. But for like eons, people have been connecting those pinpoints of light into constellations. So like you look at probably a famous one, and that is the Big Dipper, right? And you've got like a little panhandle here. And technically there's little imaginary lines connecting all of this, all these little pinpoints of light. So you've got the Big Dipper, like that's pretty clear. But did you know that the Big Dipper is actually part of a larger constellation? It's actually a giant bear. And whenever you kind of look at this, you're like, well, that doesn't really look like a bear. There's like two more dots down here. You can maybe see it. But anyways, you got to kind of use your imagination. But let's imagine for a second that in the Bible, when we talk about a theme, there's a bunch of key words that all kind of cluster together like a constellation. And so whenever I talk about the mountain, I just listed 7 of them. Oh, how nice. But that wasn't intentional. But there's 7 different kind of words that I want us to think about, and you could actually probably add a few others, but we're just going to keep it to these. So like imagine one of these stars is the word for mount or mountain. And then another one is Jerusalem, because that was set on top of a mountain. And then we also have hill, like we've been singing about. Believe it or not, Quinn didn't know my topic. He just picked those songs, and it was like amazing. Well done. But so we got mountain, we got Zion, we got temple. And it's like all of these words begin to kind of cluster together, and they can, like when you're reading through the Bible, just one of them can appear, and it kind of like connects all of them. And I'm back on the Garden of Eden, or I'm back on Mount Sinai, or I'm at the presence of God in the temple. Let me just add a few more here, just as a reminder. Oh, the house of God. That's another name for the temple. And then, let's see, was that all? Yeah, I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's good enough. You can see them. You can see them there on the screen. But I want to just run with this experiment for a second. And let's turn now to Psalm 47, and let's look at these temple words that are being used here, or these mountain words. And what we'll see is that music just naturally fits in the midst of these. The song of the mountain. Go over to Psalm 46. Psalm 46. And we'll begin reading in 46. Psalm 47. And we'll begin reading in 47, and we'll go through 48 as well. And just keep all of these words in your mind. The idea of going up, the idea of the mountain, the idea of where God's, oh my goodness, throne. What am I doing? This is one of the most important ones. The temple is where God's throne is. He's the one who dwells between the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant. That's his place of rulership. The place where he rules is on this mountain, the mountain of God. So let's read here in Psalm 47. Let's start reading in verse 1. "O clap your hands, all peoples, make a loud shout to God with the sound of a shout of joy. For Yahweh Most High is fearsome, a great king over all of the earth. He subdues people under us and nations under our feet. He chooses our inheritance for us, the pride of Jacob whom he loves. God has ascended with a loud shout, Yahweh, with the sound of a trumpet. Sing praises to God, sing praises. Sing praises to our King, sing praises. For God is the King of all the earth. Sing praises with a skillful song. God reigns over the nations. God sits on his holy throne. The nobles of the peoples have assembled themselves with the God of Abraham. For the shields of the earth belong to God. He is highly exalted. Great is Yahweh and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, his holy mountain. Beautiful in elevation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion in the far north, the city of the great King. God in her palaces, he has made himself known as a stronghold. For behold, the kings have assembled themselves. They passed by together. They saw it, and they were astonished. They were dismayed, and they fled in alarm. Panic seized them, anguish as a woman in childbirth. With the east wind, the breaking of the ships of Tarshish, as we have heard, so we've seen in the city of Yahweh of hosts, the city of our God. God will establish her forever. We have thought of your loving kindness, O God, in the midst of your temple. As is your name, O God, so is your praise to the ends of the earth. Your right hand is full of righteousness. Let Mount Zion be glad. Let the daughters of Jerusalem rejoice. Because of your judgments, walk about Zion and go around her. Count her towers. Consider her ramparts. Go through her palaces, that you may recount it to the next generation. For this is God, our God. Forever and ever he will guide us over death. Did you hear it? Like, could you feel it throughout both of those psalms? All of these words lining up? And like, what is the missing link to all of them but song? As we went through it, it's like as God is sitting on his throne, as everyone is rallying around him, and everyone's singing around this presence of God's throne on top of this mountain, on top of Zion, in the temple, in his courts, in his presence, around him. And so, as we consider this idea of the presence of God at the top of the mountain, there's multiple times in the Bible, noted on the screen, Isaiah chapter 6, Revelation 4 and 5, where a human kind of gets a glimpse behind the curtain, and it's terrifying. In Isaiah 6, Isaiah says he's standing in the temple, but it's like the roof is blown off the place. And he sees into the actual, what the temple represents, which is God's heavenly throne room. And then when he's standing there, he's terrified, like he falls down on his face. And what does he hear? But he hears singing of these strange creatures called seraphim that are flying around the throne with 6 wings, and they're singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory." And then John, as he sees a door open in heaven, he goes up into it, and then what does he see? But this huge scene around a throne, and everyone is singing praises and shouting glory and honor and strength and power to the one who sits on the throne and to the Lamb, the one who is able to open the seal. And we'll get to the Lamb later. But right now, I'm just trying to establish this pattern. Are you all tracking with this? Does this make sense? There it was, tracking. There's a bonus word that the kids have on their worksheet, and I've been tempted every time to just say that the bonus word is tracking. I get listen for that every time. Anyways, sorry, apologies. But we're just trying to establish this theme here. That associated with the top of the mountain is the idea of music. And that's even something that is even like in the secular world as well. Like, for instance, the title of the lesson, Mountain Music, comes from the greatest country music band, Alabama. Very good. I heard someone say it. But yeah, Alabama. I mean, now that's all everyone's going to be thinking about is that I said that's the best country music band for the rest of the sermon. But anyways, yeah, mountain music. Play me some mountain music. One of the most iconic musicals. The hills are alive with the sound of music, right? With songs they've sung for 1,000 years. And so, like, I was puzzling with all these things, and it's like, why music? Like, what is it about music and the tops of mountains and singing that's associated with this holy space? And so now let's go back to the mountain of Sinai, and I want us to think about the 2 things that come down the mountain with Moses. Moses is the only one that goes up to that highest place, right? Moses is the only one that goes to the top of the mountain and meets with God. So Moses is one of the things that comes down the mountain, but there's 2 things that he brings with him, and I'm gonna erase the constellation now. Just like this is just me trying to explain kind of how these things work. So go forth and draw your own constellations. You can do this with like different biblical themes, and then it kind of helps you notice them as you're reading through either poetry or any other story in the Bible, or one of the stories in the life of Jesus, or some of the things that Paul's writing. Like, that's just kind of a great study tool. But here on the mountain of Sinai, so we've got the mountain. God's presence is resting on top of it, and 2 things come down the mountain. In chapter 20 of Exodus, Moses comes down, right, with the 10 Commandments, the laws of God written on these tablets. And after chapter 20, for the next like 2 or 3 chapters or so, is actually 42 sets of commands of God, which 42 is 6 times 7. So there you go. But in the next few chapters, we just keep reading about different commandments. It's like the laws are descending from God as wisdom off of the mountaintop. And then also, once you keep reading, you get to chapter 25, and what we find is, how do I draw this? I guess I'll draw my little dots. But we've got the blueprint for this building that we've already talked about. It's that three-tiered structure, the tabernacle. And I'll draw a little altar and a basin. Anyway, I'm just going to write tabernacle so you can remember, because that just looks like a very bad constellation. Yeah, okay. So coming off of the mountain with Moses is two things. He brings down the tablets with the laws of the covenant, and then he brings down the pattern, the blueprint of the tabernacle, that structure, that then God's presence moves from the top of the mountain and goes into that structure, the tabernacle. And so, these two things, the laws and the blueprints, I think there's an overlap with them that is the same thing that is what music is to us, like that we can see today. So I'm going to draw a really big Venn diagram. But these two things overlap as patterns. I feel like the tabernacle is pretty clear. Like, just imagine a set of blueprints. It's how you have a pattern to build something. But also what the commandments are is the pattern of God's wisdom to the Israelites to show them how to live, how to structure and order their lives, to make themselves a type of place where God can dwell in the midst of them. And then with this idea of patterns is exactly what music is. So if you will, grab your songbook. You didn't know it was going to be an interactive lesson. Go to number 362. We'll just look at it. And I think we might sing the last two verses. But I just want to lay your eyes on the page here. Look at the music. Like usually we just look at the words. But like if you've got all this other stuff going on, you don't need to know it. Like just sing from the heart. But what is going on here? But it's like a map, so that we're able to go and sing this song and follow the pattern that's on this page. If you've studied music, which I have not, but all the little shapes, all the lines have certain meanings, certain structure, so that someone can just look at this and then they can either lead it or they can learn it, and then they can sing it and say these words with the music. Because, I mean, think about what music is, like technically speaking. If we go out there and I stand on 44, you're going to hear a lot of noise, like cars flying by, metal slicing air, and engines roaring, and tires going on the pavement. But like it's not a lot of, it's just chaotic noise. But when we sing, like when we sing these notes, it's taking noise. It's taking like music. It's taking rhythm, and it's forming it into a structure to create something that's beautiful. And that's exactly what these other two things that we just talked about are. The tabernacle is a beautiful structure where God can dwell in the midst of his people, and his laws create a heart in his people that is a beauty. It's a moralistic beauty that he can then dwell among them and be with them. How are we doing? Are we following with this? Is this going all right? Or are we just completely derailed and the train is it's on the other side of the planet? Well, let's sing the last two verses of this song, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. And let's just follow the pattern and experience what we've just been talking about. Know me, joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. Mortals join the mighty chorus, which the morning stars began. hit y'all with the first verse there. But do you see what we're talking about here? Is like as we all sing together, we create something as a whole that not one of us could do on our own. And that's exactly what happened here. All of Israel built the tabernacle. All of Israel was supposed to follow God's laws. And then when all of us also sing, it's we follow the patterns of heaven. It's like singing and song is like a metaphor of these two things, following the patterns of God. And then, now as we move forward into the fulfillment of these patterns in Jesus, is two times in the Bible. It's in Exodus chapter 15 and then in Isaiah chapter 12. God is called a song. It says, Yahweh is our strength and our song. He has become my salvation. God is the song of heaven, and he didn't just stay up in his mountaintop on his throne, but rather he lowered and descended himself, and he became flesh, and he dwelled among us. And then those two things, the law and the tabernacle, Jesus became the fulfillment of the law. Like as in that series that we started last week, the Sermon on the Mount, we're going to get to it, but in chapter 5, he talks about how like he did not come to abolish the law and the prophets, but rather to fulfill them, which is like to fill them up. Like imagine an empty glass that hasn't ever been used. It's like that's what the law was. And now Jesus is filling it full so that it can now like do what it was supposed to do. And he fills it full, he completes it. He fills it up. And then also, as John describes it, in John chapter 1, he just says that Jesus is the Word that became flesh, and it dwelt among us. And that word dwell among us is the same word as tabernacle. Or it's the word for setting up a tent, which is what the word tabernacle is. It means tent. Jesus came and he set up a tent among us, and he dwelled among us. He was the tabernacle, he was the laws, but they became flesh. And then, of course, like I just quoted those two passages where God is called a song, it says the next line after it, both times, is God is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. The name Jesus is Yahweh brings salvation. Yah is Jesus, Yah, and then Shua is the word salvation in Hebrew. Yahweh brings salvation. Jesus is the law becoming flesh and fulfilled. He is the tabernacle becoming flesh and fulfilled. And he is the song of salvation embodied and lived out in his life and in his actions. Till we sing that new song. If you will turn over it, let's look at Revelation 5. Let's look at Revelation 4 and 5 real quick. This is that vision I alluded to earlier where John is standing in exile on an island, and in the heavens, well, first he sees Jesus in his glorified state right before him, and then he's taken up into heaven. Then he sees the scene of a throne, and everyone sitting surrounding the throne in three different sections. You have 4 living creatures, 24 elders, thousands upon 10,000s and thousands of heavenly beings singing praises to God. And they say in verse 8, it's actually the exact same scene that Isaiah saw. It says, the 4 living creatures, each one having 6 wings, full of eyes around and within, day and night they do not cease to say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God the Almighty, who was and who is to come. And then a lamb appears at the throne in chapter 5. And the lamb, he takes the scroll, which represents something that no one else could do. And the lamb begins to open the scroll. And then look at verse 9 of chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5 and verse 9. Here in that highest place, this is like the top of the mountain. It's the throne of God. It's the courts of God. It's the heavenly, the true mountaintop is what we're reading about. And what happens here? And they sang a new song, saying, Worthy are you to take the scroll, to open its seals, because you were slain and purchased for God with your blood, people from every tribe, every tongue, every people, and every nation. And you made them to be a kingdom of priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. And so Jesus, the song that became flesh, the true patterns of heaven that descended from the true mountaintop, like a greater than Moses, and then came down amongst us to show us all of these patterns and to show us how to, in a sense, to go with this analogy, to make music. Because that's where I want to land the plane here. We're trains, planes, and automobiles. We're tracking, we're landing the plane. But living in God's patterns is true song and true praise. Whenever I started kind of this theme of music on the mountain was lighting up, I just started just going through and listing passages, and we ran out of, or it was just, I stopped because there were just too many. But a key one that I think we need to look at together before we close tonight is Psalm 96. Go back to Psalm 96. And if you want to leave a finger, you've probably already moved, but leave a finger in Revelation. We'll be possibly coming back there real quick in just a couple seconds. But in Psalm 96, it begins very similar to what we just read. It's verse 1 of Psalm 96 is, "Sing to Yahweh a new song, sing to Yahweh all the earth, sing to Yahweh, bless his name, proclaim good news of his salvation from day to day." But let's hop down to the last three verses. Go to verse 11. It says, "Let the heavens be glad, let the earth rejoice, let the sea roar as well as its fullness, let the field exult and all that is in it, let all the trees of the forest sing for joy before Yahweh, for he is coming to judge the earth, he will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness." So the question I want to ask is, how can these seemingly moralistic, free will things like trees and fields and the seas and the heavens and the earth, how do those praise? How do they sing? Why are they being described? I know it's poetic imagery, but what does that mean? That these things sing praises. But consider this, is that when something does what God created it to do, that is what praise to God is. Now, we are supposed to be praising God with our lips in the assembly like we did just a second ago, like we did this morning and this afternoon. But true song, true praise, is embodying these patterns of God's wisdom, is embodying the pattern of the one who descended from on high, Jesus, and becoming like and made in his image, and then radiating that song out into the world, and making the music of heaven right around us and everywhere that we go. Because when we take on his patterns and his ways and his thoughts and his actions, it's like every action becomes a note, every day is a song, and every lifetime is a symphony of praise to God. And the key of that music is the love of Jesus that is fully displayed in the cross and in the resurrection. Secondly, on our final takeaways, is when we think about this idea of the music of heaven, the mountain, the music of the mountain descending with us, is that we are moving towards harmony. Like what we read about in that vision of John in Revelation 4 and 5, that's what it's all headed towards, is the ultimate harmony, and everything is back at peace around God's presence. That's what we're marching towards. Where does that begin? When should that begin? Right now. Right now. And so music is not something you do on a one-to-one level. Music is something you do together, or at least good music. I know there's some really good singers out there. I hear y'all. You're good. But there's something that happens when a group sings. I was talking to Miss Becky. She knows him, and also Bob knows Brother Shane Scott that passed away last year. He was a big barbershop guy. And I've never experienced this, but one time he was describing how when you have a quartet of barbershop singers, and they all hit the note at the same time, there's something that's called the overtone. Y'all heard of this? I'm telling you everything I know about it. I've never heard it personally or been there when it happened. But the overtone is something that happens when all the four parts of the harmony, they meet together, and it creates a fifth harmony as all those are blending. And it's something beyond that any one person could do. But when four, or with a group, sing together, there is a fifth note that is hit and struck in that moment. And that's what following God should be about. Is when we are broken, when there is resentment, when there's past hurts that are unforgiven, when there's contention between groups, that is disharmony in God's symphony. And that is not singing the music of heaven. That's actually making road noise. In the middle of a beautiful forest, it's like plowing a highway through it and driving a bunch of 18-wheelers down it, honking their horn. Like that's disharmony of God's music. And this is what we're all moving towards, is that throne scene. And that's the center of reality, and we've got to bring that down with us and embody it and live it out right here and make that kind of music. And so if there's anything that is disharmony in our lives, like we have to listen for that. And we've got to get that back in tune. And how do we know the tune? We look at the master song leader, our Lord, Jesus. And then lastly and finally is, like, what we long for is that song of heaven, is the song of Eden. I said Revelation, but I think I want to end in Zephaniah chapter 3. Go to little book of Zephaniah. It's in the minor prophets, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah. That was for me, not for y'all. But Zephaniah chapter 3. It's only 3 chapters. This is the end of the book. And while we read through probably a decent few verses here, remember all those words that we looked at, all of those mountaintop words? They'll just, hopefully they'll jump off the page for you. And what this song is, it's a poem, so it probably, maybe it was a song, don't know. But it's a poem that Zephaniah writes. And it is pointed towards God restoring all of the good things that we have broken up and shattered in his creation. Ultimately pointing to Jesus, but then now that Jesus has come, we also can read this and then look forward to that scene around the throne with the Lamb one day as well. And here, let's begin reading in verse 11 of Zephaniah chapter 3. A unique thing about this passage that I'll note at the end. But in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 11, it says, "In that day," talking about the day that God comes to set things right, "in that day you will feel no shame because of all of your deeds by which you have transgressed against me. For then I will remove from your midst your proud, exalting ones, and you will never again be haughty on my holy mountain. But I will cause to remain in your midst a lowly and poor people, that they will take refuge in the name of Yahweh. The remnant of Israel will do no injustice. They will not speak falsehood, nor will a deceitful tongue be found in their mouths. For they will feed and lie down, and no one will make them tremble. Sing for joy, O daughter of Zion. Make a loud shout, O Israel. Be glad and exult with all of your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Yahweh has taken away his judgments against you. He's cleared away your enemies. The King of Israel, Yahweh, is in your midst. You will fear no more. And in that day it will be said in Jerusalem, do not fear, O Zion. Do not let your hand fall limp. Yahweh your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will be joyful over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will rejoice over you with joyful singing. I will assemble those who grieve about the appointed feast. They were from you, O Zion. The reproach of exile is a burden on them. Behold, I'm going to deal with them at that time, with all of those who afflict you, and I will save the lame and gather the banished. I will turn them in their shame into praise, and a name in all of the earth. At that time I will bring you in. Even at that time I will gather you together. Indeed, I will give you to be a name and praise among all the peoples of the earth, when I restore your fortunes before your eyes, says Yahweh." Did you catch it? In verse 17, it says, "He will be joyfully over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will rejoice over you with joyful singing." It's talking about Yahweh. It's talking about our Father. And while there's passages where Jesus sings a song, it's the only time that it talks about that God is singing over us, like singing to us. And it just reminds me of like a lullaby. Like when you're a child, that you're sung over by your parents. There's a song of heaven that we all know because we weren't made for destruction. We're made to dwell in God's presence. We were made good. But then we choose to walk away from that. And God is inviting us and promising us that one day he'll sing over us again. And he is singing over us now. And he gave us a song. And he gave himself as a song, for us to also pattern our lives after, and to sing and to harmonize with, and then to embody that, and then to go out and take his music from the top of the mountain out into the world and make our entire lives a song of praise to him. So that's the music of the mountain. I hope it's been encouraging to you tonight. And if there's anyone here this evening whose life has become in disharmony with the wisdom and the pattern and the life of Jesus of Nazareth, we invite you to, I'm using all the music analogy, but to tune yourself back in to this, to realign yourself with him. And if there's anyone here tonight who hasn't joined into that song, this is the ultimate orchestra pit. There is room for everyone around this throne of praise. And so we invite you to join in the song tonight, if you will, as we stand and as we sing.